Jane going to be here?
Yeah, she's coming right now. Maybe I supposed to if I sit here.
Mind your shot.
Got
it right around. I'll call the meeting together.
Yep.
I'm the only county commissioner. Right. Call the town council together.
Town council meeting, at 4:07.
The intent, I don't have the agenda. Purpose of the meeting, basically to give the governing bodies, town and county, and the general populace an update where we're at with the 2.5 PM advance program for air quality. That's a big subject. And I'll be laying that over to you guys, because you got the details. And then before we conclude, I'd like to address the ordinance of the town and county. There's many similarities and everything, but there's some things I think we need to maybe address, not today, but to discuss. Some of those dissimilarly can we get them to mesh and be more efficient between the county and town. And the PM 2.5 advanced program is specifically to the town of Lakeview and the county's urban growth boundary. It is not applicable beyond the urban growth boundary for reference to the future to the citizens. Come on up here, Jimmy. So I'll go and go right down the agenda there, explaining the PM advanced program for all of us to refresh us and also to the citizens of the community. Pete, introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Peter Brewer. I'm in the air quality program with the Department of Environmental Quality. My office is in Bend. I cover, or much of my work is all throughout Central and Eastern Oregon with communities that have either are meeting or not meeting air quality standards that are close to, perhaps. It's one hat I wear, but the focus here is, of course, working with Lakeview and helping prevent not meeting the air quality standard for PM 2.5. Been working with the Air Quality Committee, the town and the county for some years. Also have a few other colleagues from DEQ here.
Hi, so I'm Rachel Sakata, and I'm air quality planner from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality as well. I'm actually based out of the headquarters office in Portland, and so I kind of oversee all of the state and work closely with Peter in the regional areas to sort of address particulate matter issues. And I'm here to also sort of give an overview about the PM Advance Plan and just sort of talk about it. I was part of the original PM Advance Plan back in 2014, and so this is just providing an update. We're required to give an update every year, and so this is our 4-year update now. So that's why I'm here.
We also have a guest with us with DEQ, Michael Orman.
Yeah, hi.
You could introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Michael Orman. I'm the Air Quality Planning Section Manager for DEQ. I'm relatively new in my role, and so I'm here to learn about the work that's been done in Lakeview to address PM concerns and learn about that approach.
Michael's had a good opportunity to meet some of the people here and have some conversations, and you'll find out about just the community and the people here, not just PM issue itself.
So I'd like to add a comment. I'm not officially a liaison for the county on air quality. I'm on the Air Quality Advisory Council, but I tend to take it all in. But I give great applause to you guys and some of your predecessors, Larry Calkins and others, who have been trying to help us to stay out of non-attainment. Non-attainment has grave concerns to me because of the ramifications that it would not impede onto our business first that requires every nations, Collins, Perlite, and others. And the real issue is wood stove smoke. And the biggest task in front of us is getting our citizens, we've gone through a lot of wood stove change outs and everything, but we've got a ways to go yet. But it's a health issue for the elderly and people with asthma, and it's a health issue for young kids who might be predisposed to future respiratory problems. But a big concern of mine is if we get into non-attainment, then what are the ramifications to our economy that would discourage other business coming in? And effects to the economy has its own health effects also. But in full jest, DEQ, these folks have been exceptional working with us over the years to help us navigate through the air quality situation that we have. So it's a very big thank you.
And I would have to say, we would also like to thank you. Without the counties and the town's cooperation, there's no way we could get this done. And so really, it's been great working with you all. And I think that will be shown in sort of the presentation, just in terms of the cooperative sort of way we've been able to work together to develop this plan and figure out what strategies will work for the best, it will work for the community, it's best suited for the community.
And something we've experienced is, we think is not necessarily unique to the Lakeview area, to the town and county, but a strong point. There's a lot of can-do attitude here, and taking ownership and trying to work through issues and come up with solutions. And it's not always true in some communities, whether you understand something or not, but we find there's a lot of good people here trying to work through for the betterment of the people and the environment, community at large. And it's always great for us. It's a challenge, and we all got to work together to get through our whatever issues. There's a lot of challenges in our lives these days, and this is just one small aspect of it. But we as a state or DEQ appreciate that. It takes all of us together. And for this information kind of session is to help us all understand where we are and hopefully help come up with solutions moving forward, as we describe also where we're headed. Anything else?
No, I'll just reiterate, it is specific to the town and urban growth boundary. It's not overly specific to the overall valley, but my interest is to protect the overall valley in case EPA, because they look at the airshed. So how can we work with communities beyond just the town, right, to protect all of our interests?
All right. Well, we'll try to give so this will be a pretty quick overview. A lot of folks are familiar with issues, just kind of an introduction and warm up to our issues here. We'll shot South by Valley Fall, try to recognize the view. It's not too hard to see. I was on a time when we had air inversions, where you have, looks like a nice clear day, but smoke will rise up and hit a certain thermal layer. It's actually warmer air above, colder down, and it just kind of hangs there. Well, that's a little indicative of what happens in the valley, in the basin more. And we thought there's room for questions and some discussion as we go through. And I've waited till the very end. That probably more of the meat of issues are a little later on. A big part is with what is fine particulate matter. A very, very small particulate. Long ago, we were thinking of, what you see is, that's the dust and black smoke, and that's particulate. That's actually pretty big. A lot of what you actually see are down to the dust that you shake out when you go to the beach. So that's pretty big stuff. Fine beach sand you see there, even wider than a hair. Hair could be 70 micrograms or up to 100 micrograms for those who are thick hair. The PM 2.5, that's only 2.5 micrograms thickness, so very small. And the big concern there is what it does to our bodies. It gets into the lungs beyond your initial defenses, where it's easy for us to kick out, you know, to block that particulate from getting down further. But the more we find out about fine particulate, even smaller than PM 2.5, is that it goes deeper and deeper in the lungs or crosses directly into the bloodstream. And the more we find out about it, the more of a worry it is, and we realize how much damage it does to young and old alike. Anybody with the health challenges from, it's called COPD, or you know, asthma comes up a lot. There's a lot of other folks, any heart diseases, pulmonary fibrosis aggravation is one thing. I didn't learn that, but oh well, it's coming up. These people with the conditions, they are bothered by fine particulate. It impacts all their breathing, and anybody who works outside a lot is exposed to a lot of the fine particulate. But there's a lot of cost involved when you have health impacts from a lot of fine particulate. It doesn't happen necessarily today from something or tomorrow from something you're exposed today. These can be cumulative for your life, and that's where it hits the young very hard, as well as we're paying for now what we're exposed to for over our lifetimes.
So, because of the health concerns associated with particulate matter, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency sets federal health standards for PM. So what we have here is just sort of a history of particulate matter over the years. So back in 1987, the US EPA set a PM10 level standard, so that's for particulate matter 10 microns and smaller. And for those of you who were back in the community back then, you may or may not remember that the community had to develop a PM10 attainment plan, which was basically to bring the area back into compliance. So these were the levels set back then. Then in 1997, EPA reviewed the standards again and determined that PM 2.5, so what we've been talking about earlier, was a level that they needed to set a health standard for because of the health concerns of these finer, smaller levels of particulate. So they set a standard 65 and 15, and then as you can see over the years, they've been tightening the standards. And this is really based on the latest available health effects information. And so EPA reviews it, determines do they need to revise the standard or not, and so this is sort of the result of that. So what we're looking at right now is sort of the levels of 35 and 12. And so 35 is sort of what they look at as a daily average, and then 12 is what they look at as an annual average. And then so for the Lakeview area, what we've run into is issues with complying with the daily standard of 35.
And if you don't meet that daily standard, what does it mean? And, just a quick summary, it's you exceed that health standard. Obviously, there's health impacts that come along with it for communities. It impacts different people in different ways. There's a lot of cost with that to touched upon. It's also economic impact because the airshed's considered to be full if you aren't meeting that standard, and to bring in new, say, industrial operations or expand existing operations. There's challenges with that because the airshed's full, so you can't contribute further to that. There's economic impacts associated with that. And it's also, regulatorily wise, it takes a long time to get through the formal EPA process. But really to hit home more on the economic side, there's a lot of negative influences or impacts on businesses, whether they or not they'd like to locate here. That's a big challenge. It's hard enough, I think, today. But if you don't meet their quality standard, it's hard to get a permit. It takes longer, and it's more costly, but state-of-the-art controls in place if it's an industry or an operation that contributes to PM 2.5. They also have to evaluate, would have to evaluate the existing rules in place, and are they balanced? Or is there room for further controls on operations or practices? And that are in place, in existence at this time. Let's see. It also ties in the economic side of federal dollars. For your transportation projects, those can be impacted. It gets down to a very fine level of any federal monies that would potentially lead to more growth and development in a community have to be evaluated. Is that done in a way that does not further impact the non-attainment area to make it worse? Has to do things to make it better. And those are all economic impacts or limits to growth in the community. The big part of it is that, the last part is, if we are determined officially non-attainment, we don't meet that standard, and it's formally determined periodically through EPA, then EPA steps in with a very formal process. It's a regulatory process that's really one size fits all. And here in Oregon, we know that doesn't really work. County to county, town to town, they're all the same. With EPA, it's looking at whether it's a fairly similar, say, to a Bend or a Portland or a Eugene or Lakeview or Klamath Falls, or compared to towns in Pennsylvania, perhaps. But they have a certain way of doing things with a hole. It's maybe taking that round hole and putting a square peg. I like to think of it, we're all different communities, but to them it's how to make, with their heavy hammer or bludgeon device, this community fit in the hole that they've developed for you. And if it doesn't fit well, they kind of beat you into it. And that's not how we like to do things here in Oregon, nor in Lakeview. And we like to figure out our own pathway through these challenges without being formally designated on attainment. So that's our challenge, to avoid that formal EPA designation. Besides all the economic costs from health and business, it's a long process to get out, and there's a lot of stigmas and costs that are ongoing, like long headache. So I was getting beat over the head by the feds that don't understand Lakeview and Lake County, and they don't trust DEQ either. And there's a whole different way. We like to not have that. So that's what we're all usually shaking hands, stacking hands to get through it without that impact.
Right, and I think just to touch a little bit more on sort of the economic impact of what non-attainment means specifically for Lakeview, is that if Lakeview were to be designated non-attainment, then industries like Collins could be impacted, because if they wanted to expand, then there would be potentially additional restrictions on being able to expand. So it could mean, sort of restriction of jobs or loss of jobs. So that's something that I know the Lakeview area would not want to see, and so that's why we're working really hard to try and make sure the area does not get this non-attainment designation. So that's part of our efforts to do this PM advance plan.
Yeah, basically, read an old news articles. Somebody made a statement years ago and said, we don't want any restrictions more stringent than EPA. Actually, we're trying to avoid stringent restrictions by EPA.
But with more flexibility now, doing things through our PM advance plan and on our own than with EPA taking the wheel.
Yeah, EPA is a very stringent process you have to meet, and right now we have the flexibility to kind of work on what strategies are going to be most effective. So I'll just really quickly touch on this because I kind of mentioned it earlier. Just, here's the history of PM in Lakeview. I should say PM, not PM, my apologies. So, way back in the early 90s, we were dealing with the PM10 standard and you were above, but then we developed a maintenance plan to bring levels below, and that included strategies to reduce these levels. Some of them you may recall from my red line included wood stove changeouts. And then the area was meeting the standard. It was fantastic. And then in 1996, EPA came up with the new PM2.5 standard, levels are still low. We see some data missing because we didn't have monitors in place then. But then we put them back in, and then as you can see over the past few years, we've kind of bounced up and down above the standard. And so this is sort of one way through this PM advancement to try and make sure we can kind of keep those levels below the standard as much as possible.
And we're not the only community that's had challenges with the standard either. Oak Ridge has been having a big struggle, just barely showing compliance. Klamath Falls did not make attainment with the standard. Randall's having some struggles, Burns Hines community. So we're not unique in that way, and there's been those who have gone before us and also say they stay out of non-payment at all, if possible, if you can. Just let you know, there's other areas in the state in the same kind of position working through things, but we're all different too. There's different conditions, different demographics, the challenges. Just to remind folks that there's a monitor, there's one monitor that's used to determine compliance in Lakeview, and it's down by Center and M Street. Everyone's probably seen it at some point if you've gone down that way. Can't really miss it.
And so again, this just kind of shows the data in more detail about, how the Lakeview area has been doing in relation to the standard. For the most part, staying right around it. 2013 was kind of a rough year, just because it was really cold, if any of you recall. And so a lot of wood stove use during that time, a lot of air stagnation events. 2017, last year, was also kind of experienced a couple air stagnation events, so that, affected the levels there. Overall, trying to get it below, but this kind of gives you an overview. And then this shows sort of how EPA determines compliance. And so EPA does not look at just 1 year. They actually look at what's called a rolling 3-year average. So they take a look at the most recent 3 years worth of data. So for example, up here, if you look 2015 to 2017, they take the 3-year average of those years, and then that number is sort of how they determine. So for 2015 2017, we're just above. Back in 2014 2016, we were below, previous years, because you had that really high 2013 number that affected the overall average. But as you can see, just every year, it depends on what that the most recent year's data is, and so when EPA looks to determine if an area is going to be non-attainment or not, they look at that rolling 3-year average. So hopefully that's.
I don't quite look at it every year. That's a big process for them, doing that nationally, think of it that way. So it's, and also we are in a PM Advanced plan, which gives us some graces. We're working towards it, not just sitting by and watching things happen. So it helps us out a lot, but it does show that year to year, we still got a couple years in there, but each year is very important to keep working as we can. We can't have a bad year sometimes. We have to balance that out with very good years overall, as far as standard goes. Day to day, though, and minute by minute, we keep breathing. We hope to keep breathing. And so health-wise, it can matter. Our health matters minute by minute. But the formal federal standard is ultimately on that 3-year rolling basis of year-to-year daily standard determinations. Yeah, this just gives you a little idea of what we deal with throughout the year. This is January through December 2017. Kind of the orangish line right in the middle at 100, that's equivalent of the air quality standard. This is normalized to 100 for the air quality index. But it shows that early in the year, we're over on a number of days of that orange line. And in the middle of the year, or in the summertime, July, August, September, we had a lot of challenging times, and that's all wildfire. And then again, falling into that later in the year, into that December time frame, we had some cold weather and some stagnation. We also had some challenging times. Fortunately for determining compliance with the standard, we do have the ability to back out a wildfire from penalizing us as to being in compliance with the standard. Not that it didn't impact our health any, no, it did. All the smoke today and the last couple of weeks has, but it doesn't count against us because it is a natural event or event far out of control of us.
That's the key, is it's something we do not have control of, so it don't count against us. It's what we do have control of that we're held responsible for.
Whether it's open burning or even prescribed burning in the spring, there's controls and there's a program in place for that. But we have control. We like the match, we say, or wood heating season, wintertime, cold season. So that's just give you an idea there. And this was a challenging year for us. Other years, it hopefully doesn't look nearly so bad since it did not advance. Usually use a left-handed mouse on my computer. You get used to different hands on mice and they don't work the other way.
All right, so basically what is Lakeview doing to address PM? And I think we've alluded a lot to this PM Advanced program that we've talked about. So basically, it's a voluntary EPA program to help areas at risk of exceeding the PM 2.5 standard. So essentially, in order for a community to participate, you can't currently be designated non-attainment, but you're basically at risk of violating the standard, you have to be designated, and it's basically sort of a way for a community to develop its own strategies, its own ideas for how they're going to bring the levels down without having to deal with all the federal requirements. And so basically, Lakeview decided back in 2014 that this would be a good fit for the area to help address the levels. Basically, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 5-year plan for the area, and it required, or it involved town and county partnership and approval. We had an air quality committee that met actually monthly for about a year to sort of discuss what would be in the plan, what the strategies would be. There were a lot of public meetings to talk about these various strategies with the public to make sure that they made sense and that they would work for the community. Because honestly, if you put some strategies in place that no one's going to adopt or do, it's not going to be very effective. So we wanted to make sure that the plans that were, the strategies that were put in the plan were accepted by the community and they understood why they were being sort of put out there as options and to get buy-in. So there were a number of these meetings back in 2014, and then we were able to successfully finalize it and submitted the plan to EPA back then. And so some of the key elements that were in the PM Advanced plan was both the local town and county ordinance to institute the mandatory wood stove curtailment program. And so that has been one of the more effective ways to address wood smoke in the area. So basically, when air quality is designated to be poor, Dawn, great Dawn over here, will call a red day, basically telling people not to burn their stove because air quality is next to this is poor. And so that ordinance kind of goes into effect and saying, okay, you cannot burn it on. We'll go around and check and make sure people aren't burning because we don't want people to be breathing unhealthy air. But then in other days, yellow days, it may only be moderate airflow, so you can burn in your certified wood stoves, and then you've got the green days where air quality is good and everyone can burn. And really overall, within the community, it's probably an average between 3 to 7 red days a year that you call, so that's really it's not
Some years have a long stagnation events. It can be longer. And other years I tend to call shirt sleeve weather. It's windy, blustery, a lot of air movement, and you could have just a couple of red days. Some years we do have a couple of weeks of stagnation. Those are the tough years for everybody to try to comply. I want to light my stove, but it's a time where it could have many red days.
Another thing that was included in the FEMA advanced plan was forest agreements with the Department of Forestry and, agreements with the U.S. Forest Service about not burning on these poor air quality days because, of course, you don't want people burning out there on their lands when everyone in town can't burn. And so it only made sense to sort of work with them to make sure that they weren't burning on the poor air quality days, so they would call and make sure that it was a clean air day as well.
And there's agreement with Collins Pine as well, for
Yes.
their timberlands to not burn on the poor air quality days.
One other important element of the PM Advanced Plan was to do a bunch of wood stove changeouts in the area. And so with some money that was received from the governor's office, the community was able to do quite a few changeouts, getting those old, really dirty, uncertified stoves out and replacing them with cleaner burning devices, whether it's a certified wood stove or a ductless heat pump. That's been another effective way to kind of help clean up smoke in the area. And then other strategies to reduce PM, such as more education and outreach, just making sure people understand what the PM problem is. Looking at some of the other long-term solutions, such as natural gas. I know the community's been working really hard to try and get that natural gas hookup to the town. It's been many years in the works, so hopefully, cross our fingers, that can continue to happen. So these are some of the key elements. And then, so now, as part of this, we need to give yearly updates to EPMs of what's been happening. And so what's going to be coming before both the town and the county is sort of the 2018 update. And so that will include some things as continuing doing the work of the advisories and the mandatory list of curtailment and compliance. One of the things I think we noted, that the Air Quality Committee recommended was that there was a need to align both the town and county ordinances to ensure a coordinated approach, just to make sure that when those curtailment days are called, then it's for the area, I think what's the area that goes all the way out to the UGB, I believe, and that we're able to sort of enforce that curtailment and whether it means educating people on sort of what the curtailment means and talking to them about how you really can't burn on these red days. Let's see here, and then also just a clear path for being able to implement and have adequate funding of these program efforts. So the town does a lot of work in this, and also working with the county to kind of help maybe provide a little bit of financial assistance to the town to do this compliance approach as well. And then also part of the future strategies include a continued search for wood stove replacement, looking for alternate sources of heat and weatherization, because of course you don't want to put a clean burning device in a house that leaks air everywhere, and so you want to also see if you can weatherize it so that you really have a good airtight home that's burning well and not using cords and cords of wood. Other components also include just additional public education on awareness and outreach, and just making sure people understand, why it's important to burn clean, why we don't want people burning on red days if at all possible, and just sort of making people aware. So I think it's really key overall.
What does a green day mean versus a yellow to red? There's newcomers to town, people passing through, year to year. It's just making sure every year, whether it's this year, next year, 2020, everyone gets reminded, because this is a long-term process, a long game, or sorts of just keeping tenacious, I guess, or vigilant with the strategies and reminding people and making sure everybody is aware of the needs of the community and needs of all and what they can do to comply.
And I think one of the key things to note is that the mandatory list of curtailment is not saying you cannot burn in your wood stove, at all in perpetuity. It's just that you cannot burn on specific days. Really, there are only a few days out of the year where we're saying you can't burn just because of the poor air quality. So that might be part of, sort of the outreach and education that is going to be included as part of this update.
I'd like to just reiterate exactly what you said. The community, as most communities across rural Oregon, traditionally have relied on wood stove, and that's a great heat, good radiant. Family can go out, have an afternoon gathering wood. I mean, it's a family thing also. It's just not saying you cannot burn wood. It's just be cautious and consider it, you have red days, yellow days, which is usually only a few days at a time. I do remember 5 or 6 years ago, we had 2.5 weeks, but that's atypical.
It's probably that one year where we had a big spike, and we had trouble and didn't have as good a compliance at that time either. Hopefully, our goal is to hit that. Yeah, can we have a weather event like that and stay in compliance? Yeah. We can. We have to, a lot of bit of work to get there.
So message to the folks, is not, no wood stove
Right.
is address your red days and yellow days.
Yeah, it's
And then burn at your leisure.
yeah, very important thing to highlight. Some people will say, oh, DEQ's trying to take away your stove. No, actually, a lot of times we try to replace it with a new one. Don't always have the money to do that, but no, it's giving them a new stove if you could. It's not, mostly not there, but no, it's use it at the right time. Everyone follow the rules. Yeah, we have better.
So, so sort of the next steps for this is that the Air Quality Committee will basically finalize the 2018 advanced plan update, and then we'll take it to the town council and county commissioners for concurrence and approval, and then to submit that update to EPA in this fall, so September, October timeframe, and then to implement the strategies that are included in the plan. Yeah, and just see what success we have with that. I think, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, you know, the town and county have really done a lot of work in the past and continue to do a lot of work. We really appreciate all the efforts that you guys have done. And I think it's great that you're really trying to work hard to improve the air quality of the area. And so, this document kind of shows those efforts. And I'd like to continue that.
Just if we can ask questions along the way.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Of course, now we're at the end, so.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, here. I'm happy to back up.
You had a slide a while ago that said that, and it's hard for me to believe that we've been under the PM advance for 4 years now, I guess since 2014. And it said it's a 5-year plan. And so what happens after next year?
Right. So I think it's sort of, a choice between the town and the county if you want to kind of develop another plan, another 5-year plan to sort of show how you can continue
Continuing
to
to work towards
Right,
achieving
exactly.
the goal of compliance.
Right, and you've done a lot of the legwork and groundwork already, so, but that would be a choice between the town and county if you wanted to pursue that.
Will the EPA let us do a 5-year extension?
Yeah, I believe so.
At this point, there's no reason to think they won't.
Well, it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. I mean, it's,
Right. It's voluntary, so that's the thing, it's a voluntary program, so it's up to you to decide. But I know EPA definitely looks more favorably on communities that are taking
that
a
effort.
proactive approach to addressing PM. And so so that's something that's in Lakeview's benefit.
So to build on Mike's question, what data or would we have to show to be in compliance that would take us there? Is there such a thing as a status of attainment?
Right, so right now, you don't have a designation. You're kind of just, you're sort of, I guess, in a sense, yeah, EPA has to make those formal designations when they revise the standard. And so at the time that they did the revision to the standard, we actually didn't have enough data for Lakeview for them to make that determination. But then after that, EPA at any time could designate an area non-attainment if they're violating the standard. And you guys have violated it at times. So, at that time, EPA could have said, you know what, we're going to designate you non-attainment right now. But it's at their discretion. But because of the fact that the area is participating in this voluntary PM advance plan, I think EPA knows that you are actively trying to work on it. So they're sort of like, well, you know what, we're going to see how you guys do. And if you are able, looks like you kind of making progress, so we won't make that designation. The only time that they have to do it is if they change the standard. So for example, if in 2020 they revised the PM 2.5 standard and lowered it, and if Lakeview's numbers are above, then you will get that non-tank designation. But right now, you're kind of working hard to make sure we stay on the road.
Thank you.
If in fact we get to that 3-year attainment where those levels are all under there for a 3-year period, do we get relieved from?
You never do,
Oh,
unfortunately.
Just try.
Yeah, I mean, you're under less scrutiny,
Well,
I guess, in some ways.
the monitoring continues to
Yeah,
make sure that you're down
the
where you should be
monitoring will
and keeping it.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's sort of, and it's great, because then the community's breathing healthy air.
That's true.
It's a fantastic
That's
thing.
good results, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd love to be able to, at that time, quickly start pointing to health data or costs. It's always difficult to do, year to year to discern that or tease it out of all the data out there.
Just herald the fact that the achievement's been made in succeeding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just let it be known.
Yes.
Yeah, we,
Keep that.
last 3 years were just a little over from this last year, but prior, the year before, we're doing okay. And overall, we've been improving. And that's a trend we want to continue, and that's our goal. So when that fine line is drawn by EPA, we're below.
And actually, I want to give one more kudos to the area is that, EPA was really impressed by the PM advanced plan material submitted back in 2014. And so they actually use that as a model for other communities who are interested in signing up for the program. So hats off to you guys too for developing such a great plan.
Other
Questions?
questions?
I have a question. Sorry. When you were talking about like the forest fire not being taken into account, being taken into account, but those numbers are still there, how do you mark that as this is created by this event?
Often there can be, it can be a very well-known. So I think years ago it was a little harder to do that, where you had to document from articles, newspaper articles, reports from forestry, from Forest Service, from Oregon Department of Forestry, documenting this fire in this area, this fire in this area, and maybe even the meteorology or the outlook and the forecast, and you're trying to capture what happened at the time to help prove. It's a little easier now with, unfortunately, it's widespread fires and broad impacts to much of, but it's Oregon, California, or last year it's the whole Northwest, and then California later, and we got hit with some of that too. But so it's pretty well-known events. It's a little easier to document or to point out. But a lot of it is back mining, saying these were the fires going on, and here's their satellite images that clearly show impacts. Sometimes you have to get very detailed though, if there's a question into, did that smoke impact Lakeview or not, or was it 1,000 feet up? Like earlier today, there's a lot of haze. A lot of that's high up and isn't down in our breathing zone so much.
Come ask me, I'll tell you.
Yeah. There's smoke down here, but sometimes people look out and say, oh, this is really horrible, our quad. I say, well, it's not bad, you just can't see. But you know when it's bad, when you feel it, when it burns.
The reason I was asking is since the 3-year rolling plan, if you're looking back at 3 years ago, and 3 years ago looks really bad in the summer, is that somehow marked so that it's taken into account in the whole 3 years?
So when we submit the data to EPA every year, based on the monitoring data, we can flag the
Okay,
days
that's what
that
I
are we suspect are due to forest fires. And then if we have to do, if EPA wants us to do more detailed analysis, then as Peter mentioned, we have documentation that we submit to them. But we mark them, and then we take those, when you look at, okay, how's the area doing, and we'll exclude the forest fire data, and then we say, okay, this is what the levels are.
Okay, that was my.
They truly call it with 5-good data. So
Yeah.
you submit it, there's these little asterisks.
My air quality season technically it's from October to the, March 1st. That's when,
October is the one that really kind of
that's
overlaps.
what
That is the one.
counts
Okay.
for us.
Yeah.
I mean, it all counts, but that's where our concern comes, is basically from
The
the,
only thing we can control is wood burning stoves, and because we can't control the fires that are in California or elsewhere, so.
The advisories really kick in November 1, the daily postings, and that's tend to be,
we usually do a practice run.
or,
about
yeah.
The last 3
And if
days
it's
of
cold, if it's
October.
really cold and we're
Yeah.
having some of those the air quality is starting to
Kinda
degrade,
watch.
we can start, kick off those advisors early.
Yeah.
And that's where we have the flexibility and having the local program is to be able to respond. Oh, here's a situation, and try to, it's not easy all the time, it take money, the different resources, if you want to do more advertising, or how do you get the word out? It's not free to set up a whole new Facebook or revamp a page, or twittering this or doing that. It's, somebody's got to do it. If you haven't done it before, there's cost, but there's that flexibility to react when, oh, here's cold weather coming up and potential problem. Yep, air quality starting to degrade. We can react.
Well, we kind of somewhat on that topic of wildfire and non-wildfire, then we have prescribed burning. First couple of days of spring, I like to go outside in the yard and have the best team view. But the prescribed burning, I get a little agitated a little bit. But usually prescribed burning is below the threshold. I was on a committee last year with the state government forestry and DEQ. The constraints letting landowners and Forest Service or ODF burn was very tightly constrained for public health and other reasons. And the emphasis, because wildfire has been shown to be much more damaging to the health than low level of prescribed smoke. So the committee eased up a little bit in hope that we can get more prescribed burn and reduce the large wildfires that we have now. However, that was last year. It takes several years to implement that. But the baseline is there may be more incrementally more prescribed burning in the future. But the catch is keep it below the 35 millimeter level.
And add more buffer from the prescribed burning around the area within, say, the Goose Lake Basin. Then you have also that you're reducing the risk of a fire just ripping right through an area and destroying homes. Or, I'm kidding, the towns, as we're seeing in some states and some areas. It's like couple fold. Many reasons there, but it is a definite.
The emphasis is to get more prescribed burning, so we don't have to have a smoke, but also to protect the surrounding community.
So that's a good opportunity for me to plug the future public hearings that the smoke management plan will be having at the end of August, and I'll forward that information to Dawn, maybe share with the group here, but we'll be doing a tour around Oregon to talk about the new plan and receive comment on it. And I think the closest one to Lakeview is Klamath.
It's always Klamath. We used to, but you guys have discretion.
It's true. That's on it's at the 23rd, 23rd of August.
It is.
Yeah,
Yep.
on Thursday. In Klamath Falls, 22nd is Bend, 21st is LeGrand, 28th Eugene, 29th Medford.
My calendar's all over, but I'll try to make something somewhere.
Well, we're accepting written and comments as well, so those are all waiting.
Is that pretty much for an overview? I'd like to bring up another topic for the town for consideration. Presently, well, I'll let Dawn give a kind of overview of what she does. She works for the town. And the town and the county both have their own ordinances. Both of them are similar in many ways in government things, they're written differently. But it's been, over the years, kind of left up to Don or the town to manage the program. And I'd like to hear from the town, do you have interest in soliciting from us commissioners some more coordination and maybe helping Don do her job?
Well, I think we need to. We need to work together because like I said earlier, they're out there doing the burns out there and it affects us when the wind changes. So we've got to come up with some way to work with the ranchers and everybody to where they don't burn on red days and stuff like that. They help us with our air quality.
And then there's that jurisdictional boundary between the town of Lakeview and the urban growth boundary of this county. Don?
That's where I think it needs to correlate
Yeah.
with those two.
The county ordinance says that the town will enforce it, but we don't have an agreement how,
To enforce the county.
we don't have a memorandum of understanding between the two to get that done. So it's just something that needs to be, I mean, it fulfills the intent.
Right.
We just need that understanding, memorandum of
Solidified.
understanding. How do we help the town to help us?
And where's my boundaries with the county?
Yeah.
Can we meet in the middle?
And that's something I propose to the town, if you want to digest that thought and come back to the county with a proposal reception.
Put together a work session.
Yeah.
I would like that.
Frank, or-
Right now, Don, once he hits that boundary, even though you can say the county that you're going to enforce it for us, there's no legal documents of agreement between the town and the county. So she's kind of bumped right up against that boundary.
But they're different in the way you do enforce it would be different or called out differently in the ordinances. The ordinances are similar, but not quite enough alignment.
It's a task in front of both the town and the county to work on.
And if it would be helpful, we can also help research that too, because there's sort of a similar type, I don't know if there's an MOA per se, and I'll go look at that, but there's sort of similar type partnerships in other areas of the state. So for example, in Washington County and Hillsborough, you know, up in the Portland metro area, sort of similar. The city of Hillsborough has similar ordinances to the Washington County, but the county is the one who actually enforces it for the city of Hillsborough. So we can look and see what they have.
That would be great.
And that's just a matter of legalities of saying you have authority to cross into town.
Right.
Paper.
It's clear to everybody then.
And letting the
too.
public know that that's
Right.
the way
Yeah.
the county and the town have mutually agreed.
And
Then
just,
there's little things like, on the county, it says, what is it, Class B violation, and
Mhm.
the town says a
I was
Class
just
C
gonna say.
violation. It's just a cleanup between the two of them.
Because there does need to be some sort of consequence, because we have been nice and lenient. And yes, it is a learning process for those that have just moved here, and I understand that. But yet, I still have to abide by their guidelines as well. And in order for me to abide by that, I need to be on the same page with everybody to know where my boundaries are. Do they just get a letter? Is this gonna turn into a law enforcement issue where I have to send law enforcement out there because I already sent one letter? Do I really need to send a second letter? You got your one warning. Let's crack down and stop this so that we are in compliance, so that we don't lose our mills or our community. Because it's gonna slip away and we don't want that.
And that's the thing, if you rely on your police department to enforce in the town, the police department can't go across the border
Exactly.
to enforce in UGB, and we don't have an agreement with the sheriff's department
Right.
to hand it off to him. So it's a cleanup job. I
So
mean,
who
but
writes
that's
the tickets? If they were to get a ticket, who would write the fine?
Ray will.
Oh.
So really just a fine tune of what we've got going, because the agreement was made 4 years ago with the county and the town to take care of those who reside in the urban growth boundary, which included both citizens of the town and of the county. So therefore, we're fine tuning to make sure that all of our agreements give the enforcement measures, and we can actually clean up what we're having problems with. And it's only those red days, just those few minute number of days that we have to worry about.
Yeah, back in 2014, when we put it together, it was kind of like everybody, the county threw ours together, town threw theirs together. We need to regroup and mesh it to be efficient.
Can we do that before this upcoming season? Because if we go through another season, we're going to have another year of non-compliance, which is going to hurt us federally.
Yeah, I think we should.
And so, you know, I hope that the county commissioners in full force would be here today, because I think it's important enough for them. They're our county commissioners of citizens in Lakeview, as well as those who reside in the urban growth boundary. So, you know, they can't weigh out, well, we're going to take care of these better than these as far as health. So I had hoped that they would be here today. I thought that's what this meeting was for, to make it firm up and we can move forward, but we have that lack, so.
And
Well, I leave it up to the town to make a gesture to the county for a work group.
What do we need to do to make a gesture? I thought we did by having this meeting today. There are 2 that are absent. There's only 3 of you, so, you know, there's some of our counselors who are absent, maybe the county commissioners, and I'm just saying this. If they can't make meetings that are of this utmost importance, maybe they need to come up with a 5-member board, and they can send 3 of their members and actually act as a quorum and represent the county and the citizenry that they should be. And that's enough of my spiel, and I'm sorry, but it's gone up for 4 years, and the enforcement has been impossible. And we all do reside in the urban growth boundary, no matter it's Lakeview or the county. If we're in that urban growth boundary, we all share that breath of fresh air sometimes, and we appreciate it when we get it, so.
very much. And I'm willing to go and one-on-one talk with them and ask them, can you please look at your schedule? Can we please all? And then maybe me asking them what their schedule is like, presenting it to us and seeing where our council members can
Well,
fit
and
in.
give them
Let
our
them pick the
ordinance and ask them if our ordinance is something that they can put into their own county.
Right.
Ken has a copy of our ordinance.
Yeah.
Well, then that's all they should need, and if they can't come in line with that because of some kind of governing guidances that the state puts on them, that they can't come in line with the town of Lakeview, then we understand that. But if not, we were supposed to have agreed on this, or we did agree on it 4
Yeah,
years
and it
ago, so
never
it's
got
time.
changed.
Yeah, it's time, so.
Well,
And it got agreed upon last year as well.
today is today.
Yep, and we'll work forward to
Work forward
be better.
tomorrow.
Would be great.
And hopefully before we get into wood burning season.
That'd be great.
So would it be helpful, just, and, you know, slap my hand if I'm talking out of place, please. Would it be helpful then if, you know, as part of that discussions that you have with the county commissioners to provide maybe a draft of what a marked up version of the county ordinance could be to align with the town, you know, and
That'd be great.
to send that through the air quality committee itself? You know, so you guys, so the air quality committee could take a look at it and say, yeah, I think this aligns, and then take that to have your discussions with the county commissioners to see if, you know, they would be okay with that kind of approach?
We rely on you.
Well, no, I don't want to speak out of- I don't wanna
You've
speak
helped
out
us,
of-
like Ken was saying, though, you guys have helped us through what we've gone through, and we were in non-attainment, and that's why we're doing the PM events plan, because the community was in non-attainment for 3 years or more. So now is the time we all need to work together to make it better, and so if you guys can help in any way, I would love for you to.
And then the county can decide if you want to move forward with that or not.
Anything else for the agenda? Right.
I have nothing else. You guys? Okay, I'll call the council meeting closed at 5:06.
Thank you for being here, Gary.
Well, thank you very much
Yeah.
for letting us come.